have members of Rootstrikers. Aaron Mission will be speaking tonight. He is the main organizer in San Francisco, and I believe there's quite a few other Rootstrikers incognito in the crowd here. I thought a lot last night, to me, like personally, what this is all about. And I remember as a kid, I grew up in the coal mining areas, and I used to think it was natural to play around strip mines and open pit mines and whatnot, play in creeks with orange water. And in my time in Occupy, I've come to be able to draw a thread from those environmental issues that I'm deeply concerned about to the problems that really have caused all of that and so many other issues, which is the government in collusion with multinational corporations and the fact that we need to readjust that government to a true democracy. So Aaron Mission is a volunteer and organizer of this group, and he was a CTO at Telecoms.
Yeah, at Telecoms.
Okay. And recently he has devoted a good part of his life and soul to helping this thing happen with Rootstrikers. So, Ruthie told me I can't say without further ado, so I'm going to have to just say, here's Aaron.
Thanks. Okay, well, hello, Occupy. I'm really honored to be asked to speak in front of you guys. I was in the process of moving back from the UK to the US when Occupy was mostly happening, so I didn't go out to march. You know, I wasn't here, and it took me some time to kind of get my life and pick it up and move it across an ocean, and it took a lot of effort. But at one point I came to the Occupy site in London, and Occupy London was on the grounds of St. Paul's Cathedral. St. Paul's Cathedral is this gigantic white dome structure, and it dwarfs everything around it. It was night when I was there, and it was raining in London, as it always does. And
the cathedral welcome you? Welcome Occupy?
The cathedral is protecting Occupy, yeah. They, so, you know, and I just remember the sight of it. All the tents were clustered up, and the cathedral wouldn't let them evict. They were under the protection of the cathedral, and important people in that church threatened to resign if Occupy was evicted. But for me, it was just a visual, you know, a sight at that time. This gigantic building, and the tents kind of clustered around it, like ducklings around, around a big protector. And just thinking about the sweep of history and the way that you feel it in London is a little bit different. Yeah, how power moves through the world. You know, how from the time of the Magna Carta, we curtail the power of the king. And then we curtail the power of the Catholic Church and create the Anglican Church. And now here is a symbol of the Anglican Church, St. Paul's Cathedral, protecting people that are fighting the new way that power moves in the world. You know, the global financial elite, and we begin to kind of move against that. So this is kind of what I was like seeing as I saw this image of a great white cathedral. These little tents, and I have a real, feeling and a connection for Occupy. So I'm really glad to be here. So as I move to the U.S., where really, we have to fight this battle that against this power of money that's taken control. I kept thinking about. What is the point of attack? What is the kind of lever? What is the fulcrum that we could use? And I think about Archimedes, who says, give me a fulcrum and give me a lever long enough, and I'll be able to move the entire world. And he's talking about physics. He's talking about, something really big over here, and the right point and the right force applied at the right point to be able to shift this. And we've got a big problem. We've got really complex systems now in the world, the systems of government and economics and the World Bank and all of the things that we've built up, all of this. So I don't even know, social systems, let's say. And they're corrupt. And we need the fulcrum. And that is the problem of money in politics for us. And as I researched this, I came to Rootstrikers as an organization that really focuses on where I really believe that we need to unite and apply the pressure. And that's the problem of money in politics. And of course, we need to try to bring as many people to apply the force, because the way to be moved is truly tremendous. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about Rootstrikers. I'll just do a little outline here. I'll talk about the problem, define the problem a little bit more, and go into a little bit of depth about it. I'll talk about the issues that it affects very briefly, because we kind of all know about those. And then move to some solutions which are out there, some solutions which are being proposed. And I'll talk about kind of three levels of three types of solutions. Constitutional proposals, things that are happening at the state level on this issue, including one which is California initiative, which is happening right now, and then where we can go with national solutions. And I think that's about it. So that's kind of the outline of my talk today. So we'll start with Rootstrikers. Rootstrikers has a lot of members of Occupy that have come and are now volunteers. Young organization. We're founded in 2011. Our founder is Lawrence Lessig, and a lot of us come to Rootstrikers through reading his book, Republic Lost, which talks about this problem as being the root problem. The name Rootstrikers itself comes from a quote of Thoreau. It's for every 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil, there is one striking at the root. This image of getting to the root of the problem and making the right strike. And we're a nonpartisan organization. We believe that this issue of government corruption and of our republic having been taken from us is an issue that affects both the right and the left. Nobody can get any reform passed, and no people. We, as an organization, try to give tools and spread the word about this. So if you go on our website, you can see a lot of infographics and just different ideas for how to talk to different people about this and how to spread the word. Because this movement is young, and it's really important for us to get more people to see this as the root problem, because it's subtle and complex. So that's on the topic of Rootstrikers. So what is the problem? The problem is corruption. And when we talk about corruption, I think a lot of people imagine like a little backdoor deal at night. A real estate developer comes in with a suitcase full of money, and he sneaks in and he says, okay, he puts it on the desk of a decision maker, and he says, okay, I'll sign and I'll let you have your development project. So that's what's called like a quid pro quo corruption, and it's something that's of course illegal, and it almost doesn't happen in the majority of the cases. The issue that we're talking about is more subtle. It's dependence corruption, and it's an issue of improper dependency. So there are a few aspects to it, and
So here we do have some paper for you if you want to read it.
I think it's going to be, I'm just going to stick with this, because this guy got to pin it up. And, well, we'll just. So there are kind of three big parts to this. There's the campaign finance side of things, which is how politicians are funding their campaigns. There's what we call the revolving door, lobbying, and then we have the independent expenditure. So these are all ways that money corrupts our government and our politics. So I'll start by talking about the campaign funding system. So I think what is important for getting this message out is not to say that that we have senators or congresspeople promising the funders to pass their reform if they support them. We don't believe that that's a useful way to talk about it. But what does happen is they kind of live within this ecosystem of always dialing for dollars. We've all heard the statistic between 30 and 70% of their time in office now is being spent dialing, looking for funding. And so, of course, they develop a sixth sense for how any action that they do will affect their funding. And so that is dependence corruption. Our politicians are dependent on the funders. Now, in the Citizens United decision, I think it's Justice Kennedy, he writes that the people still have, it's okay, because the people still have the ultimate deciding power. The people still elect. They have the ultimate power, and so the system is fine. But we know that that's not the case. We can imagine a system where, even though the people have the ultimate power of the vote, the system is not okay. And that system would be a two-tier system, where you have another group that is not the people that gets to decide who the candidates are. Okay? That is a kind of two-tier election system, and in fact, that's the system that we have today. We have two elections now in this country. We have an election of the funders, and then we have the general. Well, the general actually includes also the primary. So if you do well enough in election 1, you may then go on to election 2 and compete. And even if you compete in election 2 in races for Congress, 93% of the time, the person with the most money wins, with the most Congress. So in this system, we can see that there is a conflicting dependency. Our politicians are not dependent on the people alone, which is how the Constitution and our government was meant to work. That's from one of the Federalist Papers. The government that we create here shall be dependent on the people alone. Well, that's not the case. They're dependent on the people, yes, but also, and perhaps even more so, they're dependent on the funders. So in this kind of system, it is pretty plain and clear to see that any reform which the funders disapprove of is very unlikely to pass. And this is the dependence corruption. The dependence is not on the people alone, because the funders and the people are different groups. Only 1/4% of people donate more than 200 to political campaigns. One is 0.026, right? 0.025, yes. I rounded when I said 1. 0.026. So that's only more than 200. But then the people that donate the maximum amount, 2,500 in the primary and 2,500 in general, 5,000 to the candidate is even less than that. So this is a minority, and there is a dependence. Created, and so we have this problem. But this problem doesn't. There's never any proof A lot of the time when I talk to people about this and I say, well, so-and-so, all these funders have given so much money to Senator so-and-so, and now we see that he is not passing the reform that we want. And people say, well, that's not true. The senator might have voted that way anyway. But in fact, the Supreme Court even recognizes that just the appearance of corruption is a problem. Even if there is no corruption, but a person reasonably looking at this could believe that there is corruption. That is a problem. Why? In the judicial system, there are strict rules about this. If a judge rules on a case involving, say, Exxon, and that judge owns one share of Exxon stock, he has to recuse himself. He might have 30 years of experience, a sterling record of being impartial, and not swayed by things like that. He still has to recuse himself. Why? Because his one share of Exxon stock is enough to cast a doubt on his decision. Whoever is against Exxon in that case will say, well, maybe that wasn't a fair decision. There's a conflict of interest. There's the appearance of corruption, and the appearance of corruption destroys trust in institutions. The appearance of corruption is enough to remedy and to limit speech. And that's what the Supreme Court finds, and that's why we do have some limits on contribution expenditures. Yeah, it's enough to limit speech. The Supreme Court sees money as speech, but still there are limits, contribution limits to political campaigns, and therefore there's reason to prevent the appearance of corruption. Or at least that's the argument that the Supreme Court accepts.
Corruption here is serving two masters, right? Serving the master of the people and serving the master of Exxon. Your own interest.
Yeah, the conflict of interest, I would say.
Right,
Yeah.
serving two masters, conflict of interest.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And there may not even be corruption. It may just be the appearance of corruption. The appearance of corruption is enough to destroy trust in the system. And we can see that. That poll came out that says 9% of the people approve of Congress, so Congress is now slightly less popular than salmonella. So, why? People can see this. They know that this institution is not responsive to the people. Everybody can see it. 91% of America, according to that poll. 99% according to others. So that is my summary of the problem of corruption in campaign funding. We have also the revolving door. So another way that this happens is politicians moving into the lobbying world and lobbyists moving back into the political world. And then, of course, we have the additional pressure of independent expenditures, which is moneyed interests. It's money in politics, but not specifically corruption. So I think one more thing I wanted to mention about this is that as we move into the issues, of course this affects everything, but as we move in, but there are both ways that it can go, and this is important to recognize. So we can have the funders of the politicians affect the reform and affect the legislation that gets passed, because the politicians kind of have their compass, like which way am I going to get more funding, which way am I going to get more funding. But we also have it the other way. Politicians could create laws which then require, which then enable them to collect more money. Now, there's a great story in Republic Lost about early regulation of the internet. Lawrence Lessig is talking to a Gore staffer who is telling him about a meeting that Gore had with in the mid-90s or early 90s when he's trying to create a regulatory regime for the internet that is hands off, let this thing go. This is going to be an engine of growth, let's not regulate it. And they walk into a room with this proposal and all the senators say, well, if we don't regulate it, how are these guys ever going to fund us? How are they going to give us ever any money? So it goes both ways. Another good example of this is the amount of sunsetting legislation that keeps going up and up and up and up. They want to create legislation which is only in place for 2 or 4 years. And almost all tax proposals are done this way now. Why? 2 years have passed, and the congressman gets on the phone and says, look, we really want to extend this loophole, but it's going to be tough, it's unpopular with my voters, and then fundraising calls follow. And we're stuck in these loops all the time, like these loops we're having with the budget now, with things trying to extend things. So that's another way that the corruption can filter down and affect things. And then of course, we've got subsidies to big industries, from corn, farm subsidies, subsidies to the oil companies. We've got income inequality growing because of favors being done through the strong financial lobby. We can't get climate change legislation because there are energy interests which prevent it. We can't get single-payer health care. We can get no reform which the funders do not approve. And not only liberal issues are affected, conservative issues are affected as well. I talked already about regulation. There may be areas where there should be less regulation. Conservatives would believe that. I believe that in many cases. I live in the UK. But that doesn't necessarily happen. The debt. Why do we have so much debt? Because there are giveaways happening, giveaways to large corporations. So these are just a couple of examples of issues on the right being affected as much as issues on the left. And the problem that we really have is that our ideas cannot be selected based on their merit. Then that's really what I think democracy should be about. Let the people decide. But we have a corrupt system, and it's all filtered through this lens of what the funders can and cannot approve. So, how can we fix it?
But can you talk a little more about independent expenditures and fund sales?
So independent expenditures is outside of political campaigns. They are independent of the politician itself, although they're not always completely. So that is about super PACs and not super PACs, but also dark money. Super PACs still have to report their spending to some extent, but there are some organizations that could just put their ads out, independent of the politician. So that's been rising, and Citizens United has made that worse, or allowed for more money to be spent in this way. That's the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court. But it's interesting to note that in the last election, if we talk about presidential figures at the end of September, still somewhere around 90% of Obama's funding and 75% of Romney funding, the money going in there, is still going directly to the campaigns here, as opposed to independent expenditures. Independent expenditures are a problem as well, and the Supreme Court's answer to that is that, well, it's okay as long as there's transparency. And so on this issue, we believe that the first step is to fight for more transparency, because right now it's very difficult to track. There are umbrella organizations that have funny names like Americans for a Better America, and we don't know who's really spending the money.
We had a bunch of those here in San Francisco last November, the gubernatorial elections, where a bunch of very, very wealthy people came in district supervisor elections and just threw down hundreds of thousands of dollars to get pro-poor people elected. Just threw down.
I heard that was Richmond. That's what happened.
Richmond is one
of the places, right?
District A, District A. About Wiener.
That was 2 years ago, yeah.
Same difference. They're doing a bunch of stuff.
So, do they fund the candidates directly with that money, or do they spend it as independent organizations? Do you know?
Independent. It's
Yeah.
also on recalls. There's a case here where former supervisor for the Richmond, Jacob Goldberg, was the key vote on an environmental study on market rate housing in Michigan. Right? A bunch of people were mad at him for the Golden Gate Bike. Wasn't go get parked on Sundays. So they threatened him with a recall, held a fundraiser for him. And the next morning, a progressive supervisor was a vote against environmental study of market rate housing in his neighborhood, which opened the floodgates for the fundraiser. This affects your life right here.
So it's happening at every level. And we have these expenditures, and we don't know. One of the things I heard actually about Richmond is there was a proposal to put a tax on soft drinks, and they fought this and made it. Years ago, nobody knew that it was being funded by Coca-Cola or the food companies because they didn't have the right disclosure, strong enough disclosure regulation in place. But the interesting thing about disclosure is that 8-1 the Supreme Court justices support it. They believe that that's the way that it should go. People should be able to speak, but when it comes to political speech, you have to disclose who is speaking, who is paying for that. So that would survive a constitutional challenge. So to go back to this, did I answer your question? Okay, so to go back to this, what do we believe has to be part of the solution? Really important for us to be able to reach across the aisle on this issue. As I said, at the grassroots level, people on both sides can see that this is a problem. And so this framing of this is the root issue, government corruption, the constitutional idea that government should be dependent on the people alone, and it's not. This is a framing that we believe can work to reach out to across the aisle. And surveys, polls have been done. 75% of Americans believe that this is a problem on some surveys, 84 on some others. So this is something that the people agree on. So nonpartisanship, the majority of the people are behind this. And I'll talk now about some of the things that can be done legislatively to move this along. So we have constitutional solutions. You've probably all heard of a move to amend the movement for a constitutional amendment. And we have two ways to do that. Congress could pass an amendment. They are benefiting from the system, so it might be difficult to get them to do so. Enough pressure might get them to do so. Or there is a constitutional convention path. We have a captured government. The people that wrote the Constitution tried to include a remedy for this type of situation, and their remedy was if 2/3 of the state legislatures vote in favor, then we would have an Article 5 constitutional convention, and we would be able to change the Constitution. 2/3 of the state legislatures have to do this. The last time that it happened, in the early 1900s, they were short of one vote, one state, and Congress acted to pass the amendment that people wanted to make the Senate an elected body. So putting this kind of pressure and calling for a convention in a number of states is another way to cause Congress to act and potentially pass an amendment to allow the regulation that we need of independent expenditures and campaign funding. So these are difficult and long haul solutions, but I think that they could be supported. And
can't Congress legislate and say it's off limits to the Supreme Court to do this kind of free speech as well? I thought they had the ability through statute to say the Supreme Court cannot go here on certain issues.
I don't believe that's the case. If the Supreme Court says that this is unconstitutional, then that's the final word.
If there's a special way they can,
Hey, Aaron, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's my fault. We're going to have the questions and response afterwards. If folks want to toss in a comment or a question, that's fine. But in general, if that's okay with you, Aaron, response.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll just talk about a few pieces of legislation and, as you said, legislative solutions that can be done to fix this issue, and then we'll open it up to questions. So that's on the constitutional solutions, amendment, constitutional convention. Then legislative solutions. We have a number of states that have passed some very interesting legislation. The idea behind this legislation is, well, the funders right now are not the people. How can we make it so that these groups are more similar? How can we make it so that more people are funding campaigns. And this division is race. So the idea is public financing of campaigns, and it's something that's now working in 3 states. Other states passed legislation to do this, but in 3 states it's now working. Legislation went into effect in 2000, and in Connecticut, I think in 2006. So the idea of the legislation, public financing, so campaigns work differently, and it has to be opt-in. A candidate declares their intent to go for public financing of their campaign. They will not use large funders. They raise a little bit of seed money, usually just a few $100s, but depending on which office they're running for. And then they get qualifying contributions of $5 in Arizona and Maine, or between $5 and $100 in Connecticut. And these contributions show that enough people support them, but they're quite small. And then if they raise enough of those contributions, then they receive funding from the state to run their campaign. Now, people have to opt into this. If they are very rich and they just have their own, war chest, they can still do that. Or if they still want to raise the larger contribution limits from their funders, they can still do that. But it's very effective. People don't. A lot of candidates agree to use the public financing. And in Maine, as of 2012, 86% of the Senate and 67% of the House, the state House, have been elected under public financing, taking this option, taking only small contributions from donors. And in Connecticut, after 2010, which is I think the second election that they had, 77% of the state assembly, 78% of the Senate were candidates that participated in the public funding and won. So candidates will do this. They want to represent people. They want to do the job and make the changes. And if they're given an opportunity, yes.
So quick question, was that 78% of all the candidates that ran, or 78% of
No, of the
people
people,
who were
of the
elected?
seated legislators in the Connecticut legislature. Yeah. So there are some examples. And recently, the Hawaii House becoming yet another state to pass, I think just last week, to pass this type of legislation. They call it clean elections legislation.
How old is the Connecticut and Maine statute?
The Maine statute was passed in '96 and went into effect in 2000. Connecticut, I think around 2006, a bit later. Maine was the first one, and they're based on the Maine one. That was the kind of the pilot. So this is something that we can do. It's constitutional because it's opt-in for candidates. Candidates where it's been tried do seem to be opting into it, and we have 2 acts that are under consideration that I want to tell you about. There's more. So we've got the Grassroots Democracy Act. And we've got the American Anti-Corruption Act. So the Grassroots Democracy Act, introduced by John Sarbanes, or Sarbanes, I don't know how you say his name, Sarbanes. And that's been introduced already, and so that provides for public financing of congressional campaigns. Let's see about it. So the way that works is all citizens receive a $50 tax refund, a voucher. And candidates can collect these vouchers and then get a multiplier, so that the voices of the people are amplified as compared to that of the funders. Candidates can get a 5-to-1 match from the government if they still accept larger donations. But if they accept no larger donations than $100, then they get a 10-to-1 multiplier on these vouchers. And also the act establishes the People's Fund to try to deal with independent expenditures, so that if there's massive spending in a district from independent groups like super PACs, then the People's Fund can be activated and help the candidate who is being spent against. So that's so it tries to deal with the campaign funding part and the independent expenditures part. The American Anti-Corruption Act, you can find that on represent.As online. And that is an act that has not yet been introduced. That's something that the movement is now trying to build a campaign around, national campaign, and get 1 million people to support it before that's introduced. And that tries to address the problem also of lobbying. It has a number of sections. So in addition to having a similar voucher system to the one I just described, a tax rebate that people can then use to fund the candidates of their choice, it also tries to close the revolving door by putting a 5-year period where legislators and senior staff cannot go into lobbying, and it makes the reporting requirements for who is a lobbyist much stricter. Because right now, one of the problems we have with this is that people come out of the government, and they're not allowed to act as lobbyists for a year, but they act as an advisor, and they don't register as a lobbyist to avoid registering as a lobbyist, but they're still running the lobbying campaign. So it tries to fix that loophole as well. So that's a very comprehensive legislation, and that's backed by Lawrence Lessig and Trevor Potter, and they kind of say that it's that it will pass any constitutional challenge by the Supreme Court, and it will significantly change the election landscape in this country and address this problem of money in politics. And here in California, we have a great piece of legislation that Rootstrikers is working to support, which is called the California Disclose Act. California Disclose Act is focusing on independent expenditures, which, as you so rightly pointed out, have been a problem in California in ballot initiatives as well as in elections. And what the Disclose Act does is it is a peer-through legislation that will reveal the original sources of funding for any ad directly on the ad. I mean, TV ad, black screen, white text for 3 seconds. These are the original funders, and can't use the umbrella organizations like Americans for America. So California Disclose is great. I have some petitions here. That's SB 52. So if you want to support this, if you could pass these around. If you haven't signed one of these elsewhere, this is a great time to do so. So that's in the Senate right now, and we're trying to get that introduced. So there's a number of avenues, but David kept asking me in our conversations as I was getting ready to do the speech, give some ideas for specific action, what to do. So what to do? Well, I think that where the movement is now, it's still quite young, and we need to spread the word. We need to say, hey, the problem of government corruption, government being corrupted by money, is the root problem. Our government is captured, we've lost our democracy, and we cannot have any reform until we fix this. The more people we bring around to this idea, the more people we bring around to this movement, the stronger the movement will be. So talk in your conversations about politics, talk to people about this. California Clean Money is a great way to get involved. That's a great organization. They're on a tight ship. And if you want to get involved with Rootstrikers, we have bi-weekly meetups in San Francisco where we talk about actions, and we try to come up with specific things that we can go out and do to bring more awareness to this issue. And then another thing to mention, on April 20th, one of these actions, on April 20th, we're planning a conference which will bring together Lawrence Lessig and Trevor Potter and a number of other luminaries from the campaign finance movement. And that will happen right here in San Francisco. And that should be a great event. April 20th? Yeah. So mark your calendars. And in conclusion, I just want to say that you know, this is a big issue and this is a big problem. But there's one thing that's certain: 75% of people, when asked, already support this. This needs to change. And if 75% of Americans are behind it, this movement will succeed. We will win, and we will get money out of politics. It's only a matter of how we do it and when we do it. But we will do it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Aaron. Thanks, Rootstrikers, secret folks out there sitting around. Yeah. Raise your hands. Oh, wow, just one and a half, two.
Christina was here, but she had to go.
So we don't have a lot of overhead costs, but we do have some. We'd like to pass the hat, and you got 15 cents or $15.
If we pay more, do we get more influence?
Yes, you
Get more information.
There you go.
You get to run that candidate of
Yes, it's more of this.
your choice. So we're gonna end the forum with a question and answer, and you know, also folks have opinion or information. That's cool. We'd like to ask you to kind of keep it around 2 minutes or so that everyone gets a chance to talk that wants to. So the way we'll do this is people will raise their hands, and I'll give you a number, okay? And then Aaron can answer the questions, and also maybe we also might want to open it up to some other Rootstrikers if they have a answer as well. Okay, so you may raise your hand. You're number one on the shirt there. Anyone else? Number two, number three. Remember your number. Number four. Any more? Number five. I'm going to hold the five for now. Okay, let's do that. Number one.
Yeah, this is kind of a broad question.
Sure.
But I think it's talk about it's probably an excuse this isn't true, depending on how you ask the question. 70% of people supporting these sort of initiatives. I suppose that people can influence depending on how you ask the question. So I think that's still ensuring. How do you what do you see as like what do the organizations see as the biggest obstacle to knowing there's going to be a lot of pushback, a lot of interest trying to have these sort of laws not going with them? What are the biggest obstacles that you perceive from that type of grant?
Well, I think it's a good question. Okay, so I don't know if you want to take this one.
And in my mind, there are some things on the subject of what we do about this. 75 to 80% of people wouldn't ask. I think this is the problem. The 75 to 80% of people are not currently doing something about it. And I think, you know, everybody sort of wants to know about, like, oh, how are we going to fix this problem? I think the primary way we're going to fix this problem is by having 75 to 80% of people out in the streets talking to other people about how this is the problem we can fix right now. You know, so I think that, frankly, until we have something approaching that kind of number of people actively supporting reform, actively calling for reform, that's the biggest obstacle. Because money is going to continue to speak louder than voices. But the second thing is that I think a big way that money wins is through deceptive political ads. And so, you know, passing something like the Disclose Act will be a huge win for this movement because there will be no capacity to run deceptive political campaigns through advertising going forward. We'll know who's funding initiatives. So those are my first views.
I guess just how the big narrative is with the amount of people that are actually would like to see change, and a much smaller number of people actively doing that. How do we put together? I know there's some known ways to do that, but how do we build that? It seems like it's kind of catch-22. Like you want to stop people being deceived, but how do you get to that point?
Yeah, I think that's a long process, and we're just at the beginning of that process. Talking with each other, and talking with our friends, bringing, and we'll keep doing that. In terms of Rootstrikers,
Yeah.
yeah, Rootstrikers has grown a lot, but I think also, to me, Occupy is part of this movement. It's this dissatisfaction with wealth inequality, which is caused by this. And that's a recent thing and a big upsurge in popular protests and people going out and taking action. It's happening. And since that Citizens United decision, that's become really infamous, and that's brought a lot of people into the movement as well. So it's happening. It's happening. It's rolling on.
I think we try to be, better to say one more thing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We try to be active on close to a monthly or 1 month, every other month basis, actually reviewing and action around this. And I think that people frequently say, well, what can I do about it? And my answer to them is, I'm good. And so I think the more we can grow our numbers, the stronger it will be.
Aaron, did you give the time and place for the meeting?
The meetings are bi-weekly on Tuesdays at 7:30, and you can find them on the Rootstrikers website, rootstrikers.org. Just look for the calendar, street team calendar, and you'll find the San Francisco meetup there. And they're at 7:30. If you're interested, you can also sign up. I've got a email sign up sheet here, so if you're interested in joining, then by all means sign and put your email on there. So that's up here. I don't know, should I pass this around?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go on to number 2.
So, actually, my question is, I heard a good talk, and I don't know who it was, but it was exactly that hundreds of people, and they used the analogy of
Lester talk.
Is
Yeah. That's Lawrence Lessig.
It is Lawrence Lessig. Okay, it was a great talk.
Yeah.
And it was very, he just painted a picture of a world where at first only people named Lester got to vote, and they were the people who determined who would be the candidates for everybody else to vote on. And it was just a really nice, clear description of exactly what the problem was. It was a great talk. But just to talk back about where we are in terms of the California Disclose Act, sort of the more frustrating part is that the California Clean Money Campaign has been around for 10 years. So the bad news is we don't have the legislation yet, but the good news is that the organization really is very, like I said, a tight ship, and it's really gratifying to work with that group. So I would encourage people, if you sign up on this sheet for Disclose Act, to get more information about that. It's a great group. But on the other side, the good news is that we were 1 vote short this time of getting the California Disclose Act passed as a 2/3 requiring piece of legislation. So there's definitely a majority, and there's just about a 2/3 majority. And I'm not as well versed as which legislation requires 2/3 vote, but the way it was written before, it was a financial kind of thing, and it required 2/3 vote. But it's very close. So I think that's another bit of information that can really push people into getting involved. That's what did it for me, is that I heard about it losing by 1 vote, and I was like, hang on, no. And so I got involved, but it's very close.
Yeah. So just to build on that point, yeah, the Disclose Act is a piece of legislation that can be passed with 2/3 or with a simple majority. But if it passes with simple majority only and not 2/3, then it has to go on the ballot. And the reason for that is that the Disclose Act modifies a ballot initiative from that passed in the 1970s. That has to do with the California Elections Commission. So yeah, it passed in the House. It didn't pass in the Senate because they didn't have time to pass it in the last legislative session. But it's back again, and it's starting in the Senate this time.
No.
What's that? Yeah, that's right.
But it didn't last.
Yeah. Yeah, there was one vote short of 2/3 in the House in the last legislative session, but it didn't get to the Senate because they ran out of time. They passed it right at the end.
So
Yeah.
it's got to start again.
But it's going to start in the Senate this time, and start early.
So
Yeah.
at number 2, number
Oh,
3,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
And just before we go on, just to say that, because you mentioned the Lester land talk, and of course, that was my inspiration for this piece. So, yeah, as Lawrence Lessig is for a lot of Rootstrikers activity.
What was it saying? What was it saying?
Oh, yeah. Well, he has this analogy that only people named Lester get to vote in the first election. There are 2 more around. Anybody have more petitions? Sign up petitions for California Disclosed? Anyone?
Yeah, there's one back there. Any others? Okay. Let's move to question number 3.
Yeah, so this city is the hothouse of electoral politics. So no one decides who gets to run. Public financing is available. But you still need a community base to win. You actually have to know people in an election year. There aren't any shortcuts for any of this stuff. The unregulated consolidated media make corruption normative. That should be the 4th point on your list there, because they set the normative nature of this all, and they're regulated or not, so we get to consolidate. Jurisdiction stripping is what I was talking about. Congress can change the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, not the original jurisdiction. They can say, you can't hear this. There's a theory about it. It was done during Reconstruction. Campaign finance reforms can't vary based on local candidates. If you have a publicly financed candidate who's getting a match, and someone spends $10 million, you can't match the $10 million. The Supreme Court said you're restricting rich candidates' free speech. I think it was the Arizona case a couple of years ago. It's so messed up.
That's why you have to opt in. Is that the deal?
No, you can't say that if someone raises a certain amount, there's got to be a cap that says here's the cap on what we're going to give. And if someone starts spending off the charts, you can't go above the cap. You can raise your own money above the cap.
Which is why Obama did not take it.
This is local here. We're Occupy Wall Street, and Wall Street is about real estate. It's about finance, insurance, and real estate. So locally here, real estate is how Wall Street, they can outsource real estate. It has magic here. They reach into our neighborhoods and destroy them. So we had come up with some legislation with some friends of mine from Friends of Ethics. It says that if you contribute any money to any person with an authority over a land use entitlement, then they cannot participate in that land use entitlement, or their appointees. And the other way around too, if someone has taken money from this person, then they can't do it. So we need to close down the ability to purchase this city out from under us, and it's happening in real time around us right now. We're seeing the city completely turned into a gentrified, orienting park for hipsters. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. I'm with a group called Friends of Ethics. It's kind of an elitist group with mostly gay white men. A few token heads and a couple of women as well. We've been involved in ethics here in the city for 10, 15 years. That's a century experience with it. And the whack-a-mole nature of this stuff, once you pass a law, they have people that are smarter than all of us who are triple teaming us trying to figure out how to get over the next hump, and there's really great. We were part of the team that actually beat Scott Wiener in 2011 twice. Prop F 2-1, pretty awesome. But this is where it's at. This is where it comes together. Land use and campaign finance is the rub here in the city, and there's ways to get involved in local stuff. Right? I don't think this national stuff's going to. That's a Herculean effort. We have to prove the concept how we do it locally. Let's not have referendum and have an issue with have accessible numbers.
Yeah, great. But so just to add to your point, I think you're absolutely right, and that's how California Public Financing Initiative was defeated in 2010, more local, and in LA they passed public financing as well recently. And also just to your point about media, of course they benefit from all this because most of these things are going to the TV and the large cable broadcasters, and so they stand to benefit. And as you said, that's what we have. Sorry,
right?
Let's just let Aaron finish, and then we'll probably have to move on because we've still got some more folks.
So it's one guy in District 8, right? Devin Duffy. Got $1.5 million in matching funds to not run for mayor and get appointed homicide.
There you go.
And they fixed public financing by not addressing his problem, but making it harder for everyone to qualify. I I mean, that's the kind of regulatory capture we're seeing in San Francisco.
Okay. Darren, did you want to?
No, I think it's okay.
Item number 4. I have two questions. One, I'm sure you know about 99 Lives, group of young people in Los Angeles and north, I think, that are deeply concerned about this issue and are trying to organize a massive nonviolent civil disobedience campaign around the country. Their inspiration is the students and to sit in with the civil rights to really bring this issue into public consciousness. As I'm sure you know, in the civil rights movement, nonviolent direct action is really crucial in getting the voting rights legislation passed. So anyway, whether you're working with 99 Lives and or nonviolent direct action is an important part of the strategy. And the second is you didn't give an example of wars and militarism, which which have tremendous clout in this country.
Yeah, of course, the military
and
industrial
fought off
complex.
so many members of Congress, et cetera, and just are you addressing that as well?
Absolutely part of the problem, part of the symptoms of the problem. Maybe to some extent, one of the first ways that this exhibited itself, many years ago, the military industrial complex. So very good point. All very good points.
How about the first one?
Yeah, also.
But how are you? How is nonviolent direct action part of your strategy?
Well, right now it's I think about bringing more people to the movement. With that works when you've got numbers.
Yeah.
So.
I can't imagine you guys.
We go out
violent. I can't imagine myself.
Yeah, and I think nonviolence is of course the only way forward with that, and I would love to see 100, 1,000 people come out, and sit in or do a nonviolent protest around this. So as we grow the numbers, we'll definitely do that.
That's a bunch of green.
Yeah. Nonviolent.
Don't do anything.
Number 5. Number 5.
Yeah, have you encountered the strategy as this mattered or come up where maybe depending on what type of conservatives you're talking about, have things be dysfunctional or perception that they're not working well?
In our meeting, you mean, or?
No, in U.S. society. You haven't heard of it, maybe that's a good sign.
I think you're talking about this idea that make the government work so badly that people don't like it anymore.
Right.
And they say government doesn't work.
It's easier to cut. It's easier to cut, deregulate.
Yeah, I personally think that's some places.
Number 6. And then the gentleman in the back will be number 7. You raise your hand. It'll be number 7.
Okay, just to follow Kevin. Lawrence Lessig came out of Stanford Law, right? And to address the militarism, I finally found out where Lockheed Martin is, right behind, Moffett Field. So if people want to help coordinate to support the monthly vigil, the 4th Fridays, and every Friday during Lent, but to bring it visible and help to reactivate the Stanford student body and anybody else down. Whoever can get there when they can get there, because in addition to the plant, Lockheed Martin is on Sunnyvale at the Matilda exit, and this dedicated group of 10 people have been there every month and Lent and Christmas since 1970. Okay, but this is our backyard, and then if we can get the Stanford students, with all this education of the Rootstrikers were, is you don't have to go very far. You can ride that Stanford bike to Page Mill, and then right where the Wall Street Journal is, that corner is Hanover. That's Lockheed's corporate administrative R&D. They've got the whole street, like 10 buildings. Okay, so that brings in Lockheed. But the point about the LA, the Rise Up, I think people would love to get to this kind of long-term legislative organized. But, you know, we're Americans. They want kind of the action, you know, that thrill that Occupy gave people. So I've been saying, we can identify certain places where they may not let us stay for very long, but, you know, you can do that symbolic strike, show up with some potted plant, right, that's got corruption on the leaves, right, pull it out by the roots, and you know, develop a brand that people know, that's Occupy. They're striking at the roots. So George and Charlotte Schultz, mayors, they put their names on the carriageway between the Opera House. Now they're taking over the Veterans Memorial. So you're Veterans for Peace, right? You're not a lawyer? Okay. But the point is, you know, to get, to tie it to those things that people can identify, because they're cutting the educational benefits for the veterans. So I just met, yeah, that's on the sequester block. But, you know, identify who's near and dear, and if there isn't money for the Blue Angels.
If you could just finish, if you could just come to a conclusion so we can get it other people.
Yeah, if you go to Trader Joe's on Masonic, they've got the Blue Angels on the ceiling as a display. So maybe we need to dress up or have a Blue Angel contingent that shows up and educates people on the cost.
Number 8. The back. You'll be 9, and then Ben will be 10. Okay.
Yeah, back when the Occupy movement we're in the street and stuff, you know, I see all the different placards, and you know, there was always one that said, do something about climate change. And then it seemed to transition itself. I saw a lot of placards that said system change. And people started talking a lot about system change. And it's completely normal to talk about how to fix something that's broken, like a car or anything else. And I know that, I'm not going to mention his name, but one of the most prominent activists that I know of in the Bay Area, he had a talk once about how everything, we need to fix the system in all these different ways. That's normal. But then, I went up to him at the afterwards and I said, I've also heard you say that we need to change the system, you know, the system is headed for the junkyard. And he said, well, first we'll fix it, and then we'll change it. I mean, I don't know. I'm in conflict with this. I know people that don't want this system to be fixed. They want it to fail as soon as possible, you know, for the sake of future generations. They think that the system, even fixing it, is it'll be too little too late to save ourselves. So I don't know how you deal with that. You know, when you're trying to fix a system that you know is headed for the junkyard.
Do you guys want to, either one of you want to comment on this?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't really think it's going anywhere. I kind of think it's going to, you know, and it's just a question of, you know, do we want to keep shambling along with captured government, or do we want to try to do something about it? I mean, I don't really think the U.S. government is going to the junkyard anytime soon. Do you?
We'll put you on.
No, comment for this.
Yeah.
One sentence. I like to have that same question of Erica Chenoweth, and her response was, it's really hard to organize in the United States because things are never bad enough. If we were in a third world country, revolution could happen because there's activism, there's things are in the trenches, but things are just not bad enough for people to rise up.
Yeah, you know, people, when they're hurting, they rise up. The student grows up because of debt. The worker grows up because the job is being taken away. And the foreclosure people. In other words, when people are having problems, then they rise up. And there should be millions of people in the streets right now, every day, to change the climate.
I'd like to remind everyone, please, with respect, if you could limit your questions or comments to 2 minutes or so, just so that other people have time to also talk. And Ethan is next, and then Dan, are you number 10? Did I say? Okay.
Okay, well, let me briefly comment on the question of should we fix the system or should we change it. If you fix a car by changing a piece that doesn't work and a piece that does, eventually it's not the same car, is it? It's a different car. So that's my approach. But my original question, well, I seem to recall that Occupy back in January of 2012 was had a working group working on the Disclosure Act, and as usual, we got sidetracked somehow. But how long does that, first of all, does that sound like it's plausible? And secondly, how long have you been working on this? I may have missed it.
I personally am quite new to it. I just came back to the country from the UK, so I've been since 2012. California Equity Money, it's been at it for a decade or more. But Disclosure is very close because, as we said, it was one vote short of a 2/3 majority. It passed in the Assembly in the last legislative session. Didn't pass in the Senate, so it's close. It's close, and we should press on with these measures.
Dan.
This is a comment. I just wanted to talk about. I don't remember Prop 37, but that was the GMO movement. Whenever I was volunteering with somebody just gathering signatures for it, and I thought, what is Monsanto going to say to try to beat this? I mean, it seems like such a common sense idea. Why wouldn't you as a consumer want to know whether or not it's a GMO product? I mean, it's not a right-wing idea, left-wing. How is Monsanto going to do it? What are they going to say? And what they ended up doing was putting on tons of TV and radio ads that said that this bill was going to cost you $400 extra a year in groceries. And at the end of every single ad, there's this tiny little paragraph that you couldn't read that had this doctor from UC Berkeley or somewhere saying you should vote against Prop 37. But if the Disclosure Act had been in place and it said at the end of that paid for by Monsanto and PepsiCo, I think the last one was Unilever or Conagra. I mean, people hate Monsanto. That would never, ever have failed if people had known that Monsanto was the one paying for that. So it really kind of neutralizes all of this money into those ads. We could have Exxon putting on this commercial, and you see Google or Exxon people they never got it.
Here, here.
Father Vitelli?
Well, I just want to make a comment on the thing about things are prolific in that. I mean, how can it be worse? I mean, our children now are not going to go to school. The majority of people of color are in prison. I was in prison. The concentration camps that they had in other countries, literally, thousands, millions in prison. What is happening to our children? I live in Oakland. Children are being killed in the streets. It's horrific. It's just horrific. There are so many things. And we say, well, maybe we're not shooting people in the street. We're shooting people all over the world with drones. And people are hating us. And people in Afghanistan, Kathy Kelly, they did soul searching. They said, what do people think of us? They hate America. They hate America because of the drones. There's just so many things. And then we're radiating people all over the country. We were talking about that today. And Kathy Kelly, and all of people are seeing when they see that people are being radiated. People's minds are going because of the radiation that's everywhere in our society, and yet we're building more and more of these nuclear plants, and they're going to just explode on us. Fukushima subject. We're trying to say, why are we keeping San Onofre and Canyon alive? I mean, we don't need it that desperately, and they are Fukushima just standing there waiting to kill us all off. So they are that bad. People are just not conscious enough.
Well, I think we have to take the government back. People can test their ideas against the ideas of other people, and the government is dependent on the people, and that's the core problem that we need to fix, so that we can get on with real reform.
But people have to be conscientized to what's really going on. They're doing good things. The government, they do that in every country around the world.
Can Occupy do a card that has alternative media sources, and because not everybody knows the websites we know, and gets the.
Talk about ideological.
I know them.
94.3 FM.
Yeah, I think this is all a great idea. But I don't solve the problem. And I have been reading a lot of articles about how our bodies of government function once they are elected versus the Senate standing empty with one person standing there talking into video cameras and people doesn't show up. And there's so much systemic problems. And who runs for office in the first place, how those people got, not just because of the money, but what kind of personality and what kind of idea about ego and stuff like that makes a person stand and want power to begin with, and how you deal with that. Even within an organization like a preschool, we have these hierarchies where the people who are at the top have power are the worst people and lord it over everybody else. And it brings a certain type to the fore. So I think all of that stuff is still in there, and that still needs to be addressed somehow. And I just wondered what you say that in that.
Yeah. Also, I'm sorry.
Jay.
Jed?
Jay.
Jay.
Yeah.
You guys want to?
Let me give this one to Jay if you want. Okay.
Sure, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. The problem at this point is this terrifically complex, really trickles into all aspects of the system. But I really think we can trace it back, all of these things, all the things you're talking about, back to the problem of money. For instance, the filibuster, which you alluded to, you have a system right now where lobbying firms are literally selling. A selling point is we can, if you give us enough money, buy a filibuster on this vote that you care about. Literally, this has happened on very key pieces of legislation.
That's not illegal?
No, it's not illegal. And so, but I mean, is it corrupt? I would say it's extremely corrupt. What was the other?
I think egos and the types of people that get in.
The types of people, exactly.
Yeah,
so we have a system right now where more extreme personalities, more extremely ideological people are better fundraisers. Huh. What makes people open their wallets? Getting really pissed off at each other, right?
Like radio DJs, radio talk show hosts.
Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right that it's a monster with like a million different heads, but it has one body, and the body is money. That'd be my answer.
Yeah, I was just gonna. The system that puts these people in and puts these egos in, they're being selected by funders to run. And funders are selecting these people. And if we change their ability to select the candidates, then we do change that. And that's the root problem. And I think we believe that that's the problem that should be addressed first. But completely agree with you that we've got plenty. There are many things to fix.
Let's call you number 12, and then back if you put 14.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. What's your name? Mark. I think Mark had a better point. Opposition and opposed are tremendously opposed. A number of things that convincing us are very certain. Have to subdivide all of these things and become expert at each something, integrate it together, and then go forward. How are you going to $2 trillion student loan? You could have a spearhead? No. Many spearheads? Yeah. Pressured politicians with 5 million signatures to change .org. They can get 250 signatures in 3 days. Okay, let's go for it. You can do a class action suit and a spearhead. Spearhead them against ethics. What do the American people think? Pitch them between that route. Start, it's just, we need all of it. We have to do very good with all of the issues.
Thank you.
I really agree with that in the sense that, there's so much to do. There's so much to be done. And, we all have lives. We have to live our lives and fight these battles at the same time. And we have to, individually we choose. My inbox is flooded with emails from different organizations, soliciting donations, asking for action here, asking for action there. I can't read them all. Can't do it. I want to read them all. I'd love to. I'd love to help. Can't do it. So I have to choose. And I choose to focus on money and politics because that's the root. I believe that's the root issue.
I believe you're 11. Is that, am I right?
Yes, 12.
Oh, okay. You're 13, ma'am. I'm sorry.
It was too cumbersome, and that they were looking for animals that had weight that they could program and put bombs on them. And they're actually even cockroaches, flies, and of course fish, dolphins and whatnot. And there's a real sickness in Washington, I think. And I just think we really have to accept this and try to turn it around.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
14. And then 15.
So
There's one more in the back.
Where was that? 16.
No, you're 16.
You got the numbers now?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We got it.
All right. I think you had a good point. Maybe we should start over.
Okay, let's start over. Ann's number 1. David's number 2. Number 3. The gentleman in the back's number 4.
If we can do it. Yes.
Stop talking.
All right. So my more of a comment, and it has to do with Ruthie's issue, and everybody's realizing how multiple this is. And I think that two points. One is that we have to think on different time scales, because you're right, everybody wants it now. But I think the most radical political thing I've ever done, I've told many people here, is to actually homeschool my kids, because it allows them to think independently. And this is not a kind of, I'm not seeing it as a, programming them for something, but this is another area where I find I'm talking to people of all different political persuasions, and I think issues that seem to lend themselves across the aisle might be actually maybe the kind of weakest point, or the point of strongest personal connection, where people are a little disoriented on this polarization issue. So I think looking long term at how we treat kids, because it is a sickness, and I think that it has to be, on your personal level and your own personal ethical level. But if it just stays there, it's going nowhere, and that you have to choose at least one, and we're doing this, one thing that works with other people to do to go on. So I think getting other people, talking with friends about it, and that's like one of the scariest things. I mean, when we're talking about talking to people on the street, that's hard. But talking to your friend about something political where you never talked to them about anything political before, that gets my blood pressure higher than any of this stuff. With the cops. So, that's like something we can all do tomorrow, and I think it's time.
Yeah. And to your point about schools and education, there's a financial interest in there as well with the testing companies that generate testing materials.
I'm really grateful for the great work you're doing. My question is this, and maybe you said this at the beginning and I missed it, but how large a group are you? I mean, are you all across the country? And people doing this in how many states? And also, how are you funded?
Disclosure, please.
So we're a project of an organization called Fund for the Republic. We are a national organization, and growing. Yeah, we're not huge, enormous, but we try to reach out on the internet, and we've got meetups across the country. Philadelphia, New York, here,
So,
San Jose.
Yeah, we have agreed
pretty active groups in, as Aaron said, San Francisco, Philadelphia, New York, actually in DC as well. Depending on the particular action, so we're active on, try to be active on a first or monthly basis. Who's available, who's sort of, interested in stepping up and leading an action, which kind of shifts from time to time. But we've had actions in Chicago, in Austin, in Dallas actually, in Connecticut, in Boston. So we are present in a number of different cities. We have a list of almost 70,000 people who are active online, not necessarily on the streets, but we'll sign on petitions and things like that. And in terms of funding, no foundation support. It's all individual driven.
Clarification, is this all under the Rootstrikers banner or your umbrella organization?
All under the Rootstrikers banner. Yeah.
And who is the Fund for the Republic?
Fund for the Republic is basically a group that specifically concerned with the issue of money in politics. And Rootstrikers is actually in the process of becoming a 501c3. And so this is a home for Rootstrikers law that's getting its official organization and paperwork sorted out. And they've been really gracious to host us as a project. We really, have the reason we have a website. Rootstrikers actually, as an organization, has a staff of 1.5 people, so it's very, yeah.
You know that one, Dave.
So we're really mostly volunteers. Aaron, myself, we get no money at all from the street, so it's really very volunteer driven. But to the extent that this operation couldn't happen without the 1.5 people, the support that we've gotten from the public is really crucial. Very
Thank you.
Number 3. Jay is national volunteer.
Yeah, my ears
so.
So, yeah, I want to find out that international, corruption is obviously everywhere throughout the world. And I would like to know what are some of the groups that's organized internationally to do on that. Also, part of that got me interested is that the Indian ways of them following Chinese politics very closely recently, especially with the change of leadership and at least from the wordings of the top leadership, they're looking at the corruption problem very seriously. They have no campaign, but then there are a lot of people say revolving doors too. They just try to ownership of the state and federal people actually vote the members of the party thereof. So my plan, I have my own plan too. Okay, my own plan is that this is the way we want it. Okay, I actually was myself very serious and actively setting up eco-city project in China, but then in a way that kind of fun, but I would like to set up grassroots organization to give the top level people a push, because right in the middle, that's right in the middle here, that all the people have to get the money, all the power, it doesn't even want to change, and they're even resistant to change from the top leadership. Yeah, so I mean, maybe you know what groups in Hong Kong or Taiwan or.
I'm sorry, I can't speak to that. But on the international issue, you're talking about corruption being bad in China. So I'm originally from the Soviet. Happens in Russia. And it's that's problems that are on a different level. There's quite different things going on.
The global capitalists suck in and corrupt. They create a web of corruption.
I think that there is a global money problem, and I think that the U.S. is probably a good place to start like that.
But if you watch Russia Today, they have done exposés on the WTO, and you can see the Brussels bubble. It's so you can see people who are exposing, working on exposing.
Yeah, well,
But not on agenda though, right?
Let's focus on number 4.
You told me about, talk a little bit about Trevor Potter, who shows support from McCain, so be trustworthy or?
well, he's been interested in this issue of money in politics, and he's a former FEC commissioner. So he's been he's been trying to grapple with it for a while.
The question is,
But
people on the right, after you work with somebody on the right, you might have the agenda. You don't want money in politics, but their agenda is not progressive, you know what I'm saying?
I think it's really important. I think it's really important to be able to work with those people. Yeah, I think that's key. Because this is an issue that everybody can unite on. We can unite on this issue. We can fix our government, make it responsive to the people, and then we can let our ideas be tested against each other on their merit.
Yeah, and this is not the kind of issue I think that is going to pass as a partisan issue. Even if it were to pass, you look at what's going on today, like for instance, Obamacare. It's constantly under the threat of repeal. And I think that if you don't actually work this out in a way that a broad coalition of Americans, regardless of their ideological beliefs, are behind, you're going to see, we pass it. Next session is going to be a strong effort to overturn it, repeal it. So I think it's something that we need a broad coalition to do.
When you guys discussing, is there any sort of discussion about whether we should talk the other side or basically agree with the game or how would it resolve?
Sorry,
Do you guys basically agree with the game, we're going to include everybody, or some guys on the left are saying, I don't want to talk to everybody?
Yeah, no, I think it's been our philosophy from the beginning that it's really important to have cross-partisan dialogue. We don't believe this is a partisan issue. This is an issue about the 99% versus, I can do more than 99% versus the 0.26%. It's not a left versus left. We're all getting equally screwed by this system, regardless of whether we're on the right or the left.
Well, regardless of what you think, okay, maybe those people are by seeing that.
There was an event in Boston where we Arms Across the Aisle event, and we actually have some videos if you go on the Rootstrikers video channel of where we members of Rootstrikers are sitting with members of the Tea Party, and they're saying they're speaking on video to say, I believe this is a problem, and I believe this is a problem. We may disagree about a lot of things, but we agree that government corruption is a problem.
How about conservatives and libertarians?
I'm going to take 5, and then the gentleman there will take 6, and then Ann will take 7. I got to say that my brothers and sisters on the extreme left and even radicals, I think the one failing that we have is we become so rigid in our beliefs that we become like water buffalo turned inward, getting smaller and smaller and smaller into a circle, instead of reaching out in areas that might be common. And if we're going to always play this game where the right is evil and we're the good guys, we're going to maintain our tiny little presence here in this room. So I just strongly so support that in the places that we can agree and reach across, especially forming a real democracy, then let's shake it out on the vote. Number 6.
I remember before one of the elections, I forgot which one, but Medea mentioned saying that, we who are aware of what's happening, we need to spread out, get to all these other areas, to educate people in the Midwest, or here and there. And that's a hard thing to do. I just visited a friend who used to live in Berkeley in Miami for 2 weeks. And he's been there 2 years, and he's met very, very few activists. He spends most of his time on the computer. He says, I don't have too many people to talk to. here, because they're mostly into eating and consumerism and whatever. So, I don't know, I had a car, I rented a car, and I took them all over the place. And we started meeting some people, young people and stuff, and most everybody we met were, a lot of them, most of them we talked to at our place were Democrats. And they were, you know, saying good things about Obama. And so we were like a 1-2 punch, you know. We were telling them everything bad about Obama. And actually, I think we did make some inroads with a lot of people that we met traveling around. And even his sister was a liberal Democrat. And her friends came out one night to dinner. There was about 3 or 4 of them. They were all Democrats. And we all challenged them. It was interesting because here I don't get into those conversations. I don't talk to. I don't hang out with them. Are you believe in working within the framework? Or the third?
That's a good question. I vote Democrat, but I vote third party as well. You know, depending on the person. And but on this issue, I think you know, again, I think this issue is nonpartisan.
But to clarify, Rootstrikers is not overtly a part of any political
Absolutely.
part, right?
Yeah, nonpartisanship is a big part of our platform. So my statements were just personally about me. Okay, I kind of want to start to wind down. We're getting towards 8. So should we take 1 or 2 more? And then
Let's take Ann. Is there a burning desire of any others? Okay, let's close it with Ann.
We got one right back. Mine is really quick, because you already
Go ahead.
basically said, but just reminding people, if anybody was here for how many Salah, who was in the military, he said exactly the same thing, that change comes first and an ideology later, and that you have your ideas, but first we have to start talking to people.
yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
So we got one in the back and one in the back.
Okay.
Can I just talk to people? I have an issue that will get everybody talking, and that is that if we can get the form of voting federal, like it is here in San Francisco, then you have a first, a second, and a third choice, then we would have third parties and a fourth party. And we would have much better representation, but the Republicans and the Democrats would join together to fight it down in their middle.
Yeah.
But if we had that, we would have an overnight change.
Yeah.
Right here in San Francisco.
You guys want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that kind of preference-based voting is a great idea. Again, I think given the system now, that reform is more difficult to pass.
I'm good.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. So we do have some forum announcements, and then we'd like to leave it open as well to announcements that other folks might have. So tentatively, in April 15th, we're going to start a